I never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural. I mean, who does, right? Stories about shadowy figures lurking in corners or whispers in the dead of night. I always chalked them up to overactive imaginations or cheap horror flicks. But that all changed. It started with something my 4-year-old daughter Lily said one night. I was washing dishes in the kitchen when I heard her giggling from the living room. I peeked out and saw her sitting alone on the floor, crayons in hand, whispering like she was chatting with someone. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She looked up, her big, innocent eyes sparkling, and said, "Sarah, my friend. She lives in the basement." I smiled. A tight, awkward smile, the kind moms give when their kids come up with something quirky. Kids do that, don't they? They invent imaginary friends to play with, especially after moving to a strange new place like this. Lily and I had only been in this old house for a few months. It was my parents' place, handed down to me after they passed away. A creaky, wooden relic tucked away in a quiet suburb. I'm a single mom, fresh off a divorce. So when I inherited it, I thought it was a chance to start over. But there was something off about the house, I'll admit. The smell of rotting wood mixed with a damp, musty tang. The stained walls, the way the floorboards groaned under my feet. I told myself it was just old. Nothing creepy. That is, until the weird stuff started happening. At first, I brushed it off. Lily would sit alone, giggling or murmuring like she was deep in conversation. One time, I asked, "Who's Sarah, honey?" She answered without missing a beat. "She's a little girl in a white dress. She likes playing in the basement, but she says it's cold down there." I shivered, not out of fear, but because of how specific she was, how sure she sounded. It didn't feel like a 4-year-old's make-believe. Still, I told myself it was nothing. The basement was just a dusty mess of old boxes and cobwebs. I'd locked the door the day we moved in and hadn't bothered to check it. I hated that dark, suffocating space anyway. But then, one night, everything shifted. I was in bed, drifting off, when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate thuds echoing from downstairs. Thump, 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 like someone pacing on the hardwood. My heart pounded, but I told myself it was the wind, or maybe rats in this old house. I flicked on the light, grabbed my phone, and tiptoed down the stairs. The sound stopped the second I hit the living room. Nothing, just darkness and the ticking of the wall clock. I checked the basement door, still locked, the key safe, in the drawer. I laughed at myself for being paranoid, but the next morning I installed security cameras around the house, just for peace of mind. I had no idea that was when things would spiral out of control. The second night after setting up the cameras, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed, a camera alert. I opened the footage and my blood ran cold. The basement door, the one I'd locked tight, was creaking open, inch by inch. No one was there, no figure, no shadow. But it moved, like something was pushing from the other side. I bolted downstairs, flashlight shaking in my hand, but when I got there, the door was still locked, untouched. I replayed the video. It was real, clear as day. That's when I started wondering if Lily wasn't imagining things. Maybe Sarah wasn't just a game. After that, Lily got stranger. She started drawing pictures I couldn't explain, sketches of a long-haired girl in a white dress, standing in the dark. Some showed an old bed, stone walls, like the basement, a place she'd never seen. "What's this, honey?" I asked. She just smiled. "Sarah told me to draw her house." Chills ran down my spine, but I tried to stay calm. Then, one morning, I nearly screamed. On Lily's breakfast table, next to her cereal bowl, was my mom's silver bracelet, the one that vanished after her funeral. It gleamed like it had just been polished. "Lily, where'd this come from?" I stammered. She looked up, calm as ever. Sarah found it in the basement. She said Grandma left it there. I didn't know what to say. That bracelet was my mom's last keepsake, something I'd searched for and never found. How did Lily know about it? Why did she mention Grandma? I started feeling watched, right here in my own home. That night, the footsteps came again, louder, closer. I'd had enough. The next morning, I grabbed a flashlight and the key, my heart pounding as I unlocked the basement door. A wave of damp, moldy air hit me, but there was something else. A faint whiff of old perfume, the kind my mom used to wear. I crept down, the stairs creaking under me. The flashlight swept over dusty boxes, then stopped at a corner. A big, ancient wooden cabinet blocked the wall. Something told me to move it. Behind it was a small door, sealed with rotting planks. I pried them off, my hands trembling, and stepped inside. I nearly collapsed. A tiny, hidden room, dark and suffocating. An old, single bed, tattered kids' clothes from the 80s, and a leather journal lay scattered on the floor. I picked it up, flipping it open, scrawled words, stared back. They won't let me out. I turned the page, and a photo slipped out. A little girl, eerily like Lily, glaring at me through faded paper. Then Lily's voice echoed from the stairs. "Mommy," Sarah says. "Grandma locked her down here." I froze, the journal slipping from my hands. That handwriting, it was my mom's. What happened in this house? Who was Sarah? And why was my sweet, gentle mother tied to something so horrifying? I didn't know, but one thing was clear. Something in this basement was calling my name. I stood there in that hidden basement room, the flashlight trembling in my grip, shining on the dusty leather journal. Lily's voice, "Sarah says Grandma locked her down here," rang in my ears like a haunting chant. I didn't want to believe it, couldn't believe it. My mom, the woman who tucked me in every night, who taught me how to tie my shoes and bake Christmas cookies, could she have done something this awful? But the journal in my hands, with her familiar slanted handwriting, left me no escape. I sank onto the cold, creaky bed, dust coating my fingers, and started reading. Each word stabbed me like a knife. June 15th, 1989. Sarah cried again today. She doesn't understand why she can't go outside like Emily. But how could I let the neighbors see her? A deformed child is a disgrace to this family. I couldn't breathe. Sarah. Emily. I'm Emily. Who was Sarah? I kept reading, tears blurring the ink. She was born with a huge birthmark covering half her face. The doctor said it was a birth defect, but I knew it was a curse. I had to hide her. My chest tightened. A twin sister. I had a twin sister, and my mom locked her down here, in the house I grew up in for years, while I lived oblivious upstairs. I flipped to the last page, and the scrawl made me want to scream. Sarah died last night from pneumonia. I buried her in the backyard. God forgive me. I clutched the journal to my chest, sobbing onto the cold stone floor. I thought of the bracelet from this morning, not just my name etched on it, but Sarah, too. 2 tiny names, side by side, like a cruel reminder. My mom made matching bracelets for us, but only I got to wear mine. Only I got to live. Sarah was caged, erased, a ghost no one remembered. I couldn't stay in that room another second. I bolted upstairs, journal in hand, and stumbled onto the porch. I needed air, light, anything to prove I was still alive. But all I could see was a little girl, just like me, crying in the dark, calling my name while I never heard her. I had to know more. The next morning, I drove to Mrs. Margaret's house, the old neighbor who'd lived next door since before I was born. She was my mom's best friend, the only one who might know something. When I knocked, Mrs. Margaret opened the door, her cloudy eyes widening. "Emily, "What brings you here?" she rasped. I didn't waste time. I slammed the journal on her table, opened to Sarah's page, and demanded, "Did you know about this? Did you know what she did?" She sank into a chair, hands shaking, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "I always suspected," she whispered. "Your mom said Sarah died at birth, but I heard a child crying from your basement for years. Some nights, I saw her carry a bowl of porridge down there, eyes red like she'd been sobbing. I yelled, 'Why didn't you call the police? Why did you let this happen?' She bowed her head, choking out, 'Who'd believe a kid was locked up in the 20th century? They'd call it family business.' I wasn't brave enough. She pulled an old photo from a drawer and handed it to me. It was my mom, young and beautiful, holding two identical baby girls. But half the picture was torn off, Sarah, wiped from memory. I left her house with a heavy heart, but a new question burned in me. If Sarah was dead, who was talking to Lily? That night, I found Lily at the table, sketching the basement room in perfect detail, down to the bed and wall cracks. Next to it, in messy handwriting, "Sarah wants a real burial." I shivered. Lily had never been down there. How did she know? That night, I had a nightmare. A girl with a birthmark covering half her face sat in the basement corner sobbing my name. Her voice was Lily's, but deeper, sadder. I woke up drenched in sweat, knowing what I had to do. The next morning, I grabbed a shovel and went to the backyard where Mom said she'd buried Sarah. I dug, each scoop trembling, until I hit a rotting wooden box. Inside were a child's fragile bones, wrapped in faded white cloth. I fell to my knees, clutching the box, crying, "I'm sorry, sis. I didn't know you were there. I thought it'd end there, that I'd found the truth and could give Sarah peace." But as I stood to call the police, Lily ran out, eyes wide with panic. Her voice wasn't hers, low, old, furious. "Don't! Grandma will kill you like she killed Sarah." I spun around, stunned, and my phone buzzed, a camera alert. I opened the footage and my heart stopped. A woman with platinum hair stood behind me in the yard, silent in the midnight dark. I turned, but no one was there. Just the cold wind, and Lily whispering, "She's not gone, Mommy." I stood in the backyard, clutching Sarah's wooden box of bones, tears streaming down my face. Lily's words, "Grandma will kill you like she killed Sarah," echoed like a chilling wind cutting through the night. I checked the camera footage again, staring at that platinum-haired woman behind me in the dark. But when I turned, there was nothing, just swaying trees. I wanted to scream, to run from this house, and all its horrible secrets clawing at me. But I couldn't leave Lily. I had to find the truth, not just for me, but for Sarah, the little girl who never got to live, never got to be loved. And for my mom, who I was starting to realize might have been trapped by something darker than I'd ever imagined. The next morning, I drove to the old psychiatric hospital where my mom was admitted after a breakdown in 1992, something my family always hushed up. I didn't know what I'd find, but I needed answers. An elderly doctor, his hair white as snow, agreed to see me after I practically begged. He dug through files, his shaky hands flipping yellowed pages. "She had paranoid schizophrenia," he said, voice low and heavy. She believed Sarah, her daughter, was the devil's child. That birthmark, she called it a punishment. She told us she strangled Sarah to free her, but no one believed it. No body, no proof. We thought it was just her delusions. I sat there numb, the floor dropping out beneath me. My mom killed Sarah. Not pneumonia, not an accident, but her own hands, lost in a madness she couldn't escape. I could barely hold the file he gave me. Inside was a letter in my mom's shaky scrawl. I can't tell what's real anymore, Sarah. Forgive me. It was never sent. I clutched it, sobbing in that sterile office. My mom wasn't a monster. She was sick, caged in her own mind, and no one helped her. No one saw her pain, or Sarah's. But the figure in the camera, I told the doctor, and he sighed. Her illness could be hereditary. Your grandmother showed signs too, undiagnosed. Hallucinations, visions. Maybe you're starting to see them. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. I wasn't crazy. I saw her, plain as day. Then I thought of Aunt Helen, my mom's sister, who I rarely saw. Her hair went platinum young. Could it be? I called her that night, and when she answered, her voice broke. Emily, she couldn't control it. Once, she locked me in that basement for 3 days, thinking I was an enemy. I escaped, but I didn't report her. I was too ashamed to ruin the family. It hit me. The woman in the footage was Helen. She'd come that night, maybe seeking answers, but couldn't face me. No ghosts, no curses, just human pain, passed down through generations. I knew I had to end it. I held a small funeral for Sarah, just me, Lily, and Helen. I placed the twin bracelet on her tiny coffin, tears falling as I pictured 2 sisters who never met. Lily stepped up, laying her drawing on the grave, 2 girls holding hands in sunlight. Sarah says she's not mad anymore, she whispered, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. No more footsteps, no more eerie sketches. Lily was herself again, like Sarah had finally left. The next day, I visited my mom's grave. Standing there, the wind brushing my tears away, I whispered, I know you were a victim too. Rest now with Sarah. I tied a white ribbon between their graves, a promise they wouldn't be forgotten. As I walked away, sunlight broke through soft, like a final embrace. This isn't a ghost story or a curse. It's a family destroyed by untreated mental illness. A tale inspired by a real case in Ohio, 1978, where a child was hidden for years over shame. Don't stay silent for pride. The invisible kids around us deserve a voice, even if it's too late. Maybe somewhere, Sarah's found peace.